Hi, my name is Pam, and I'm an author, coach, and energy healer. So today we'll be talking about why you keep repeating the same patterns in relationships, money, or life.
Thank you, Pam. So, one of the first questions I have is what exactly are energetic imprints and how do they work?
Well, energetic imprints. So, since we are energetic beings and energy is what powers us, uh, whatever happens in our life, whether it's from generations or even gestational or environmental, something that's going on around us currently, everything leaves an imprint that is not visible to us because, like, we store memory of our childhood, but consciously we are not aware of it, and yet under hypnosis we can recall it as if it's happening right now. So everything that happens goes through our conscious mind where we consciously kind of deal with the situation, and then we form beliefs about that, and then we hold on to those beliefs because this is what our experiences taught us. Our minds are designed to protect us. So when something happens and the result is A, but it's not a comfortable result, we were looking for B, which did not happen. So we connect what happened with A, that's what it is, and we need to protect ourselves from that. That leaves an imprint in our subconscious. And then once we are consciously we've processed that, and again, this happens like automatically. It's not like we're not always consciously thinking of, oh my God, I'm never going to talk to that person again. They were so rude. But it's all just from the way our minds are, from the way the energy works. It just automatically uh, saves it, like in the computer. Once we have the recording on, it's automatically recording. We are not every minute checking to see if it's recording or not, or what's recording. So similarly, our minds work like that. There's the conscious mind, there's the subconscious mind, and then there's the unconscious mind, which is the largest part of us. And then everything is just in there, and it goes on for generations from lifetime to lifetime unless we resolve it. But if we are not aware of it and we've suppressed it, and because we cannot see it, we think we're done with it. You know, uh, it's like I would compare it to like the perennial plants. The seed was planted, it came up this spring, it bloomed in summer, it died in fall, and then the ground is covered in snow, and we think it's gone, but it's not gone. It comes up the next year. you know so similarly, when our any thoughts or any traumas that we've experienced, even good happy memories are there. So it's not only the traumatic memories, but it's the traumatic ones that our mind tries to protect us from. So those trigger, um, but also, like, from your childhood, like, if you go to, let's say you walk into a restaurant and you smell something cooking that your mom used to cook, all of a sudden all those happy memories of your childhood would come, flooding in, even though you haven't thought of those in years. So that's how the energy, that's the imprint that we live with. And then um, these are pretty strong, and then it's behind the scenes that start triggering. Because think of it, okay, if there there's water in a bowl and there's sand and mud and everything, if you keep stirring it up, then you're constantly going. But even if you let it settle and it settles at the bottom, it's still there. So when you pour it and you change the direction of the water, the mud gets sort of unsettled and will sort of contaminate the water. You see? So that's how the subconscious kind of has all those memories in there. They may be lying dormant for a long time, but if something stirs it, something triggers it, you may be, you may have got to a point where you've adopted very um, serene demeanor because you've decided, okay, this didn't work, that didn't work, and I'm going to let this go. But sometimes you actually don't let go. For example, now recently in this event that we had last week, what came up was something I was not even aware of. And again, I'm going deeper as the layers are peeling off. And this was like from so long ago. And I realized that for something that had happened in a long time lifetime, ago, but I had not forgiven myself for it. So not wanting to remember that, I was not wanting to deal with that. So it took me, a good day to kind of come to terms with it and realize, because again, it was a decision that I made from um, with no love, all because I had a lot of knowledge and I had a lot of power. I misused that power. And so all I remembered was that it caused devastation and hurt a lot of people. So what came up now was like, how could I be so stupid? I had the knowledge. Why did I make such bad decisions? So even though I had moved on in a lot of ways, I had not forgiven myself for that. So I was not allowing new energy to flow through. So even though it was a tiny block, but it was very, very deep. So when we are working with energy, the imprints that are newer, reflection periodically is very important, because if we don't keep doing that and just keep settling it, and the sand or it gets caked, it gets sort of solidifies into a block. So it's more difficult to kind of break those blocks. It's all blocks can be broken. Anything that can be blocked can be unblocked, but the person has to be willing to do the work, even if it is painful sometimes, even if it is uncomfortable. It is worth it, because now, we were kind of exchanging messages with the people who were in that event. A lot of them are having um, purgings where, a lot of discomfort is happening. For some, it's even physical symptoms. For some, it's just mentally, they're feeling overwhelmed and stuff, like I was feeling. So there are, and as I've said before, I mean, these are very unique to each one, because each one's belief systems are different, their traumas are different, their way of handling those traumas are different. So there's so many variables, and um, but that's the imprint that we were talking about, that is left by our actions, by our traumas, and those are because they're on our energetic body. They are not easily visible, or easily, we're not that readily aware of those.
Okay, and you did kind of answer my question as well. I was going to ask you what is the role of the subconscious, but you did actually speak on that in your answer as well. The another question that came up for me as you were explaining is related to how these blocks are forming, everyday things, sometimes positive things, sometimes negative things. but everything kind of leaves an energetic imprint on you. And sometimes the negative imprints, when they're not settled, or even if they are settled, sometimes they form blocks. And like you explained, every block can be unblocked. My question is related to the energy healing side of things. So let's say there is a block that's a little bit more solid, and then someone else has a similar block, but it's not as solid. What would be the difference between the two? What would make someone's block more solid versus someone's block less solid? So, as an example, let's say there are two children growing up in the same household and they experience similar things, and they both have the same trauma around an issue. Maybe their parents were very strict about something, and so they both have a trauma related to that. But one's block is a little bit more solid, and the other one is less solid. Why would one be less solid than the other if they are very similar in their experience and very similar in the environment and in the experiencing of that trauma? And then the second part of that question is, um, would it be normal, or would it be natural to think that the one with the less solid block, if they go through energy healing, it would be resolved quicker than the one with the solid block? Or is it purely based on belief, where you can have a more solid block, but because of your beliefs, maybe your belief that you can heal that block or release that block is stronger, then you will release it quicker than someone else, if you understand what I'm saying.
Okay. Yes, I do. And so the first, to answer your first part, even though the two children are growing up in the same environment, their previous experiences, their previous lifetimes, their previous traumas may be different. So they are, and their personalities may be different. Their nature, like one may be more, couldn't care less, happy-go-lucky. The other one is more sensitive and more intense and takes everything more personally. So how they're absorbing it in this lifetime is different. It's the same knowledge. It's like students in a class, everybody's getting the same information from the teacher, but some, are absorbing it and understanding it, and others, are totally lost, because either they don't have the background knowledge that is required for that, or the experiences. So, since we're talking about like lifetimes, uh, one child may have had more lifetimes as a human being. The other may have had fewer lifetimes, so maybe a new soul, and have less experiences. So what they're absorbing, what they're taking in from the parents is absorbed differently. It's like, you put a sponge in the water and you put a rock in the water, they'll absorb the water differently. The rock over years, eventually it will wear out, but the sponge will readily absorb the water. The second part is, it's not necessarily true that the person with the softer block will sort of heal quicker with energy healing, because, as you said, beliefs come into it. And also, it depends on how open that person is to receiving the healing. Because if that person feels that, oh, I'm fine. I mean, I'm always happy. I don't have any trauma. So why would I want to do energy work? They're not even ready to do it. But the other one has suffered enough from the triggers, from the responses, reactions, and they kind of then, decide, okay, I've had enough of this. I'm ready to do what it takes for me to get rid of this, to get to the root of the problem. So their willingness to be a participant in their healing and accepting the healing, agreeing to receive the healing, will facilitate that more readily than the one, even though the blocks here are not that much. because I've like during this painting, I've reached out to different people, and I see that because some of them, I mean, now it makes me aware of, their responses and reactions, and I can kind of see some of them are lighter, and even though they may be happier, but either that could be either because they've buried it very deep where they're not even in touch with their unconscious selves or subconscious self and are not willing to deal with it. And when it does start coming up, I mean, a lot of them are finding that it's more painful than they realized. Me being one of them, because there were a lot of things that I didn't know I had processed that way. So as they came up, they were definitely more and more painful. But and for the most part, I thought I had resolved things as I was going. But in this lifetime, I was resolving a lot of the stuff as I was going. So it didn't take that long to for me to get to the real deep issues, to the root. And as I'm going deeper and deeper, I realize like, how much I've held on to. So there's not the volume, but there is, a, I mean, they're very deep. So for some, it may be they're taking in everything and put it under the covers, taking in everything, put it under the covers. So they may have a lot of stuff that is there. And they're so, it's like in a house. I mean, you can have a few things that you use every day. So you know where those are. But there are other things that you've put away for when you need them, but then you forget where you put it because it's been so long since you used it, right? On the other hand, there are others who keep everything here. Okay, I might need this, I might need this, I might need this. And I think I'm a combination of the two, you know. So they'll have a lot of clutter around them, but so that may take a little longer because you're clearing the desk, but you're putting it on the side, and then you may be saying, "Oh no, I need this space." Then you move that something somewhere else. So you're just shifting, you're changing beliefs, but you're not actually getting rid of it. So again, variables. There are too many variables, so that would still process differently. Does that
That's
answer your question?
Yes, it does. And it actually brings up a follow-up question for me on beliefs. And that is, why do people feel trapped in these belief cycles? Is it because they become part of your identity? And then it's like an identity issue. Like you've taken on this belief, you've had it for so long, it's part of who you are, you've made it part of your identity. And now it feels dangerous shifting that belief because it means a change of identity.
Absolutely. You totally nailed it because the reality and our identity are different. Um, Now, our identity could be shaped by our beliefs in that, okay, if people have been telling us, like some people will say very harsh things, or even parents, to motivate the children, they think that by goading them, or um, not like making them too soft, make them tough, so they can deal with life. But in that, it uh, when think about it, if you punch a pillow, it'll be a different impact on your thing hand, or if you punch a wall. So when you're doing that and you're telling some kids that, oh, you're no good. I mean, why did you mess up? Why did you do this thing? They will hold on to the beliefs, even though they may rebel against it, even though they may deny it, but somewhere deep down, they will form the belief that people don't like me. And even if my own mother doesn't like me, my own mother doesn't think well of me, why would other people do that? You know? So it's not that you always consciously form beliefs. It is very subtle. And that is why a lot of times you're not even aware that you're forming beliefs. Um, and this is where self reflection comes in periodically to clean house. Um, Another practice that I do and I learn to do is, at night before you go to sleep, um, just releasing um, the day's events and energies and returning them to God. Um, I remember reading a story about this, one person who was going home and his coworker needed some tools. So he said, "Well, why don't you follow me home? And, I'll give it to you there." Excuse me. So he followed him home, and both the guys are very tired after a hard day of physical labor. So as they came in, and the person whose house they were at, he stood outside the door and he made these motions to where, like he took off something and hung it up in on the nail that was outside, and then walked in, total change in personality, where he was just enjoying and laughing, joking with his kids and his wife, and gave his friends the tool. So the next day, the friend asked him, he says, "Can I ask you a question? Because what did you do? You were totally transformed. Here you were so tired and, so weighted down with the day's events." So he says, "Well, I have made a decision that I'm never going to take anything that weighs me down. I'm not going to take it into my house." So the gestures that he did, he took his, jacket off and he put everything in there, all the day's events, all, something that had happened that was weighing on him. And he put it on the nail outside and prayed and asked God to take it away. So he never brought it into the house. Now that is symbolism, but that's what we work with in our energetic bodies since we don't see it, but we imagine. Our imaginations are a lot stronger than our mental abilities. No matter how much you tell yourself that you're not afraid, that there is nobody in the house when you're alone and dark, but if your imagination is going, you can't win against the imagination. So he used his imagination to put that, worked his negative energies, the fatigued part of him, put it out there, asked God to take it, who can, you know, he can deal with all the weight of this, and walked in on a clean slate. So that is another thing with the way the energy works, and the beliefs can be shifted, but you have to acknowledge and be aware that you have debilitating beliefs. Because if you're not even acknowledging them, you say, "Oh no, no, I'm very positive." And an unconscious mind, you may be. That's what I thought for many years, until I started digging deeper. And as we got to it, it may not be the current beliefs, but they are just on the surface right now. Because below the surface, like, okay, the river's flowing, it carries everything. Um, whatever comes in its way, it carries it. Then there's a lake that is still, but still has depth. And then there's the ocean that has so much more depth that you don't realize, so those would be like, the conscious mind is the river, the subconscious mind is the lake, and the unconscious mind is the ocean. It is, uh, a much greater depth than the lake, and the lake is still, but it's still, and the ocean is still also on the surface, but there's so much more going on underneath. In the lake, yes, it's still on the surface. There may be slight waves as the wind blows, but it's not moving as fast as the river is or carrying the stuff. So our mind, monkey mind, as some, we like to call it, is constantly going. And if not managed, if not stilled from time to time, it can like just constantly drive you crazy. So, this is, yeah, I basically, I mean, that was the beliefs is what I was trying to explain.